Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Chazakim ubruchim. Be'ezrat Hashem, tonight we are going to be studying Parashat Vayetchanan. A lot of incredible things to talk about tonight. Our shiur tonight is sponsored by Mr. and Mrs. Rami Kalatizadeh. Thank you so much. Tizkul mitzvot. Thank you for being with us tonight. Chazak Baruch. Okay, so let's start with the beginning of the Parashat. First of all, we see a really important lesson. We spoke about it yesterday, but just to review very briefly, the idea that Dad Zekenim brings down that Moshe Rabbeinu prayed to come into the land of Israel 515 times. He was told to stop, right? Hashem said to him, don't pray anymore about this. Why? Because if you do, I have to let you in, and that's not good. I can't let you in, Hashem said. So stop praying. But what you do see is the idea of being persistent in your tefillot. Until Hashem tells you no, you don't stop. You keep on going. That's a very important lesson that we always have to remember, to always keep on pushing and pushing and pushing in our tefillot. Every prayer gets you a little bit closer to the finish line, and it's a very important thing to remember. Okay, that we said yesterday, Baruch Hashem, very important. Now, another very important lesson that I think we see in the laws of prayer, basically, and how to approach prayer, is that Moshe Rabbeinu was asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu for what it says, Va'etchanan. The word chanan is the same root as chanina. Chanina is like a pardon. A pardon, when a president gives a pardon, what that means is that he was sentenced, he was convicted, the person was put in jail, and the president has the authority to simply pardon him, to just almost like a gift, to just say, you know what, I'm granting you a pardon, right? And it's a big power that the president has. He has the ability to commute people's sentences. He also has the power to pardon someone. Says Rashi over here, right? Chanan is the root of chanina. And chanina means that he's asking Hashem to simply pardon him, which is really a gift. That's why Rashi says it's matnat chinam. He's asking for a free gift. And you have to understand something. If there was anybody on planet Earth who earned it, who really earned it, it was Moshe Rabbeinu. Everybody always thinks that I deserve it, I deserve this, I deserve that, I'm entitled to this, etc. And they're not. A lot of people think they are, but they're not really. But Moshe Rabbeinu was super humble. Everything that he didn't attribute to himself. Whatever accomplishments he had, he didn't think that it was because of himself. So therefore, when he prayed for something, he did not pray out of, I deserve it, Hashem. Look, it's me, I'm your guy. I've been here for 40 years taking care of these people. Take care of me now. It's my time to get what I deserve. No, you don't deserve nothing. Now, what does that mean? You're the Moshe Rabbeinu. If anyone deserves anything, it's you. But Moshe Rabbeinu said to himself, who am I to ask something from Hashem? The only way to ask something from Hashem is, Hashem, please give me a gift. I don't deserve it. I don't deserve anything. I deserve nothing. Who's speaking? Moshe. If Moshe's attitude was like that, then us, how much more so? When we come in front of Hashem, it has to be in the same format. Vayetchanan. Hashem, I'm begging you for a gift. I don't deserve it. I don't deserve anything. But it has to be that you're asking for a gift. Now, a good idea always, remember, never make any neder, never make any vow, but you can always say, Hashem, please give this to me, because if you give this to me, bli neder, without making a neder, I plan to do this mitzvah with that, I want to do this, X, Y, and Z. Hashem, please give me a big house, because bli neder, I want to host a lot of guests. I want to be able to do mitzvot with my house. I want to do chesed with my house. Hashem, please help me to have a good parnasah so I can give a lot of tzedakah. Again, bli neder. No vows. But if you give Hashem a reason to let you in, or to let you have what you're asking for, then it's a much better shot of getting it. Now, Moshe Rabbeinu actually did that. Why did Moshe want to go into the land of Israel? It's a tough question. I have a book at home that was written by the Megalei Amukot. It's a book, an entire book on this week's parasha, called 252 Reasons Why Moshe Wanted to Go into Israel. I have a book like that, I kid you not, written by one of the greatest Kabbalists who ever lived in the time of the Ramah, the Megalei Amukot. 252 reasons why Moshe wanted to go into Israel. But I'll tell you what the Gemara says, the simple reason.
We can hear you, Rabbi.
What?
We can hear.
You can't hear?
I mean, I can hear.
Can everybody on Zoom hear me? Can we get a thumbs up, thumbs down? Anybody? Thumbs up. I got a thumbs up. Can you hear me too? Okay, great. So what? I lost my train of thought. What? Right. So the Gemara tells us, thank you. The Gemara tells us the reason that Moshe wanted to come into the land of Israel is because he wanted to do the mitzvot hatiluyot ba'aretz. He wanted to fulfill the mitzvot that can only be done in Israel. You can only give trumot and maasrot, the truma that 2% of your harvest goes to the Kohen. You can only do that with Israeli produce. 10% of your harvest that you have left after separating the 2% of the Kohen, you have to take 10% and give it to the Levi. That also you can only do with produce grown in Israel. Moshe wanted to do all these mitzvot. He wanted to do Shemitah, which is this year in Israel, only in Israel. Let the field lie fallow. These are mitzvot you can only accomplish in Israel. So Moshe wanted to do those mitzvot. And still Hashem told him, no, it can't be this time. But very important, Rabotai, we see this idea when you pray, you should make sure that you do it as matnat chinam, asking for a free gift. Now, another incredible lesson that we learn from Moshe Rabbeinu. The Midrash brings down the following mashal. The Midrash Rabbah tells us there was once a king that hired a very good friend of his to appoint nobility. To say, okay, this guy, he's a very noble person. I want to make him the Duke of whatever area, the Duchess of so-and-so area. And he's in charge of appointing the nobility of the kingdom. So he receives a very high status in the kingdom. If he's the guy that the king put in charge of appointing the nobility, so then that means he's, real VIP. And he is doing it, and he's telling this guy, okay, you're going to be in control of this area of the country, you're going to be the governor of that area of the country, you're going to be the duke of this, the duchess of that, etc., etc., and he's doing his thing. One day, he comes back to the palace, and there's a bodyguard outside, and he's not letting him come in. He says, excuse me, I got to go to work. So he says, no, you can't pass. He says, what are you talking about? You know who I am? He says, yeah, I know who you are. You can't go inside. He says, what do you mean? If you know who I am, then you know that I'm one of the most important people in this country. So he says, no, it may be, it used to be, but you didn't hear it. You didn't get the memo. They fired you and replaced you with somebody else. Right? So he says, what? He hears that, and he can't even go inside. Surely enough, the king hired his other friend to take over this guy's position, and now he's doing this job. And this guy can't even make his way into the palace, let alone appoint people and decide who's governing which sections of the country. Says the Midrash, that's exactly what happened to Moshe Rabbeinu. It's the craziest type of analogy. I would never say it myself, but it says a very interesting question. The pasuk tells us, "Vayitchanan el Hashem ba'et hahi le'emor." Vayitchanan el Hashem, I prayed to Hashem at that time, saying. What is at that time? Ba'et hahi, at that time. Says the Midrash, amazing. At the end of last week's parasha, it says another ba'et hahi, at that time. What does it say at the end of last week's parasha? Ve'et Yehoshua tziveti ba'et hahi le'emor. I commanded Yehoshua at that time to take over the leadership. I commanded him to take over. So what do you see? That at that time, Moshe started praying, okay, so at least let me into the land of Israel. Okay, he's taking over, but let me in. What? No, you lost it. Why? Because now your time is up. Now Yehoshua is taking over the leadership of Klal Yisrael. Very amazing thing. So that means Moshe had his reign, he had his time, he had his ability to do things. The Midrash says, like, for example, it didn't say, Hashem did not tell Moshe that Moshe should announce that if Hashem is siding with me against Korach, for example, that Korach should get swallowed into the ground. Hashem never said that, but Moshe had the ability to say that because he's in the control right now. He's the man right now. He says those words, and that's what happens. But Tigzar Omer ve'akemlach. He says the Gezerah, he says the decree, and Hashem makes it happen. So says the Midrash, that's all while he's in control. But now, Yehoshua stepped in. Hashem took the control away from Moshe and gave it to Yehoshua because Moshe is about to die. Very, very, very kind of sad thought to think about. Do you have a question?
Yes.
Yes.
Hashem asked Moshe to appoint you.
Correct.
Not directly.
Correct. Hashem asked Moshe to do it. That's right. But the bottom line is that he put his hands on Yehoshua, and now Yehoshua is the man. Moshe is giving his final goodbye speech, but really it's Yehoshua in control now, which is I'm sorry?
The new king.
Yes. But what's amazing is that even somebody as powerful as Moshe Rabbeinu, who could literally decree that somebody should get swallowed up by the ground, and he does, and many other things, at a certain point loses that ability. So the Midrash tells us over here a very important lesson. Every person has his moment. Every person has his hour. He has his time when he's able to accomplish things, when he's able to achieve things, when he's able to do things, but it's not forever. It's not forever. It doesn't always last you. What?
This is the Gemara saying Moshe asked
Yes, the Midrash. The Midrash. Yes. The Midrash, I could show it to you, yeah. That's from Chazal. A person doesn't have forever. A person is given a certain amount of strength, a certain amount of ability, power to do, to accomplish, to achieve, but it's not forever. And therefore, we have to take every single moment that we have and use it to the best of our ability. And it's so important because sometimes people will make the sad mistake of procrastinating, doing things that, of rather not doing things that they need to, and saying, well, eventually when I have time, then I will do that. I remember when I was in yeshiva, I saw on the same row of benches, there were two guys. I think they were both doctors that had retired, and they would come in at 9:30 in the morning, and they would sit and learn in the yeshiva all day until around 2:00 every single day, every day. So somebody might say, okay, good, Baruch Hashem, they worked their whole lives, they retired, and now at retirement, they can sit and they can learn Torah every day till 2:00, Baruch Hashem, which is great. Halavai, everyone should be able to do that, right? But a person should not make the mistake of saying, eventually down the road, when I get there, then I'll sit and then I'll learn. Then I'll open up my Gemara and start learning. Right? When eventually when I get there, then I'll start to learn. Because God forbid a person might not make it. Hashem Yishmor. Who told him that he's going to reach retirement? He's going to get there. Hashem Yishmor. We never know. We never know. Everybody has to assume that this is the moment that he has to do what he has to do, and he can't stop. He has to keep moving while he can. Even Moshe Rabbeinu had a moment where Hashem told him, "That's it," which is an amazing thing to think about. Okay, I want to share with you another very interesting point about the Parashat. So Moshe Rabbeinu prays how many times? 515 times to enter Israel. Amazing. He doesn't get in. Now we know that Aharon, his brother, who passed away at 123, also didn't go into Israel. So the question that the Mefarshim ask is, why didn't Aaron also pray to go into Israel? Where was Aaron? Interesting question, no? Huh? Everybody had something. Moshe also had something that prevented him from going in. Okay, but he was going at it. He was again and again and again. 515 times is a lot of times. At 360, maybe you give up. 390, you give up. 515. Where's Aaron? Do we even find one time that he davened? It's an interesting thing. So I saw this question was asked by the uncle of the Bet Yosef. The uncle of the Bet Yosef, Rabbi Yitzchak Karo. The Bet Yosef was Rabbi Yosef Karo. His uncle, the Toldot Yitzchak was the name of his book. His uncle, Rabbi Yitzchak Karo, asked this question. And I saw him give two answers. Very interesting. The first answer that he gives is, we know why Moshe wanted to go into the land of Israel, to do the mitzvot, hatluyot ba'aretz, to go do the mitzvot that you could do in Israel. Which mitzvot are we talking about? Let's say the mitzvot of giving, let's say the truma to the Kohen. Aaron said, if I pray to go to Israel, people might think that it's because I want to get all the truma from them. So that's the last thing I need, he says. Who needs that? That they should think I want their trumot. I'm not going to forget about it. Another answer that I saw, which is a very profound answer, is that Aharon, says the Toldot Yitzchak, his sons took over for him. Meaning, Elazar is the Kohen Gadol. Itamar is also going to serve as a Kohen. Pinchas is a Kohen. Their grandchildren are all going to be Kohanim serving in the temple. He left behind a legacy that is exactly doing what he was doing. So even though he may not physically be going into Israel, but his sons are going into Israel. And therefore it's as if he's going into Israel. But Moshe Rabbeinu, his children, they're not exactly taking over his job. He wanted it, he prayed for that, but Hashem told him no. Who's taking over his job? Yoshua. Yoshua is taking over his job. So he doesn't have somebody to take over for him, to lead his legacy. They're not following in his footsteps. They're doing something else. They might be wonderful people, but they're not doing what he's doing. So the only way that he can get there is if he physically goes himself, which is a very interesting answer that he gives. It's a profound answer. The reason that it's so important is because it really echoes the words of the Chafetz Chaim. The Chafetz Chaim writes in one of his books that people make a big mistake. People, again, they say, you know what, I'm not going to spend that much time learning or doing chesed or doing tzedakah and things like that, because I have to provide, I have to make a living for my family, I have to do, which is a very important thing. But if you're only doing that, so what's going to be with all those mitzvot? What's going to be with all the learning you're supposed to do? What's going to be with the chesed you're supposed to do? What's going to be with all those things? So they say, well, Baruch Hashem, I'm going to do so well, B'ezrat Hashem, that my kids will have the ability to go and to do that. I might not be able to, but my children, B'ezrat Hashem, because I will have left for them a nice, inheritance or whatever, they'll be comfortable. They can be the ones to go and do all of that. Says the Chafetz Chaim, big mistake. Because nobody is to guarantee that a person's children are going to be doing anything near what he thinks he wants them to do. There's no guarantee like that. There's absolutely no understanding. Nobody should think and should have an understanding that when he leaves the world, his kids are going to be exactly the way he wanted them to be, so that they will be the ones to live his legacy out, to do the Torah learning that he was supposed to do the chesed he was supposed to do all of those things. There's no such guarantee. Zchut avot is great, but you're the one to make the zchut avot. You should be the one to learn and to work and to do all these things spiritually so that they should have the desire to do that as well. And it's a very important lesson, because a lot of times people, Shalom Aleichem, welcome, people make that mistake. And he quotes a pasuk. The Chafetz Chaim quotes a beautiful pasuk. The pasuk tells us, Ki cho amar Hashem l'sarisim. This is what Hashem tells those that have no children. Asher yishmeru et shabtotai ubachru ba'asher chafatzti. If they keep my Shabbat and they choose to do what I desire to be done, umachazikim bevriti, and they hold on to my covenant, Says the Torah Kedosha, V'natati lahem bebeiti u'b'chomotai. Hashem says, I will put for them in my home and in my walls, Yad Vashem, a hand and a name. Tov mi banim u'mi banot, much better than boys and girls. Shem Olam, an eternal name. Eten lo, I will give him. Asher lo yikaret, that will never be cut off. What a powerful pasuk. The real ultimate eternity comes from a person's good deeds that he does himself, by far more significant than a person's sons and daughters. His own work, his own mitzvot that he accomplishes. That's why it says, very powerful, very interesting thing we learned in Parashat Noach. It says, Ele toledot Noach. Noach ish tzadik, tamim haya bedorotav, et ha'elohim italech Noach. Vayoled Noach shlosha banim, et Shem, et Cham, ve'et Yafet. It says, these are the offspring of Noach. Noach was a righteous man, right? Noach ish tzadik, tamim, he was complete in his generations. He walked with Hashem. And Noach gave birth to 3 children, Shem, Cham, and Yafet. Interesting question over here. Noach, you're trying to tell me who are your children, right? Ele toldot Noach. These are the kids of Noach. So what should the next line be? Shem is the first son, Cham is the second son, and Yafet, and he's the third son. Why are you giving me a whole big spiel? Ele toldot Noach. These are the offspring of Noach. Noach is tzaddik. He was a righteous man. He was whole in his generations. Et Elokim italech Noach. He walked with Hashem. Why don't you say you should know Noach was a big man, and then tell me, and these are his kids. No, it says these are the kids of Noach. Noach was a tzaddik. Is the question clear? 100%? Yes or no? 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 Okay, so I'll repeat it again for you, okay? The question again is like this. It says, these are the children of Noach. You would imagine the next line is, what are their names? Instead, it gives you a whole description about Noach. It says Noach was a tzaddik, he was a righteous man, he was this, he was that. Why don't you just get to the point? Who are his children? From here, says Rashi, the answer is very clear. Because Ikar toldotehem shel tzaddikim, the real children of a tzaddik are not his sons and daughters. The real children of a person are his mitzvot and his maasim tovim. Those are the children of a person. That's his deeds. Ele toldot Noach. You want to know who are the kids of Noach? The fact that Noach was ish tzaddik, that he was a righteous man. Tamim haya bedorotav, he was whole in his generation. Et Elokim italech Noach, he walked with Hashem. That's the kids of Noach. Those are the kids of Noach. The fact that he did all these incredible things. So that, Rabotai, that's what we're learning over here. Here you are, you're thinking, you're Moshe Rabbeinu, you're thinking, hey, a lifetime of serving God. At least my kids, should be the ones to take over. Hashem says, no, they're not. It's not for them. So he's got no recourse now. Aaron and his children are going to take over. They're going in. They're going to be a part of the land of Israel, serving the same way that their father did. So then it's as if Aaron lives on. So he has it made, Baruch Hashem. Moshe can't say the same thing. That's why he has to pray 515 times. Aaron doesn't make one prayer. But Moshe 515. Why? Because he has no choice. Otherwise, how does he live on? His kids aren't going in. At least not the way that he hoped. So it's a lesson for all of us again. Doesn't make a difference. A person, no matter what his situation is, has to push himself to the best that he can, because those are his real children. His mitzvot, his maasim tovim. Okay. While we're on the subject of children, a couple of important points that I thought to bring up from the parasha. So it says, Hashem decided to show Moshe Rabbeinu the land. Right? It says, go up to the mountain. Hashem tells Moshe, V'sa einecha yama v'tzafona v'teimana u'mizracha u're'eh be'einecha. I want you to go. Look to the north, look to the south, look to the east, look to the west. See it with your eyes. And I always had this question. Isn't that the biggest tease? Look but don't touch. What is that? You're taking Moshe Rabbeinu, he's praying for it 515 times. Take him up to the mountains. I want you to see it. Look at it. Look north, look south, look east, look west. But You're not going to cross the Jordan. You can look at it, but you can't go there. I never understood this. You hear the question, yes or no?
Yes, because for everybody else, seeing does not mean anything. It's not Hamashu. There's nothing. But for Moshe Rabbeinu, it was.
In other words, the seeing.
For him, seeing it is as if he did the mitzvot.
I hear. That's a good idea, because when you see it, it says you imagine that you would actually fulfill the mitzvot, and therefore it's as if you did it, because of the rule that when you have in mind to do it, it's as if you did it. I hear. That's a nice answer. Beautiful. So another answer that I saw was from the Mincha Belula, one of the commentaries on the Midrash. And he says, sorry, I think I lost the zoomers over here. Oh, sorry. So it says a very interesting thing. He says that we know that the people that died in the desert, they died in the desert and they were not allowed to see the land at all. It says in the pasuk, "V'chol mena'atzai lo yiruha." All those that upset Hashem will not even merit to see the land of Israel. So if Moshe would not have seen the land of Israel, so that it could have been thought that he's one of the group that made Hashem upset in the desert. And that would be bad, that we should have such a thought about Moshe Rabbeinu. So says the Mincha Belula, the idea is that Moshe Rabbeinu needed to see it so that it should be clear that he didn't die because of them. He died because of his own thing. Separate, totally separate issue. Which is an interesting idea. I actually heard this thought from Rabbi Moshe Meir Weiss. He says, from here you see a concept that when there's a punishment, even if there's a general punishment, let's say for a group of kids, but it's important to make it clear that, you're not punishing that kid who didn't do what everybody else did. If you have one kid that wasn't disrespectful, you can, point it out and say, he wasn't like everybody else. He didn't have that same chutzpah as everybody else. So he shouldn't think that he's being thrown under the bus because of what everyone else did. It's an interesting point that he's making. You have to differentiate with the chinuch of kids that, he did one thing, but you didn't necessarily do that. And therefore, it's a little different with you. Interesting point that he brings up. I want to share with you actually another really, really, really important point that I saw today from the Al-Shich HaKadosh in terms of chinuch, in terms of educating children. Really important point. We say something every single day, and we never really think about what it's saying. It's amazing. It says v'shinantam. It says what do we say in the Shema? Ukshartam leot al yedeh ve'avta et Hashem Elokecha. You shall love Hashem your God b'chol levavecha, in all of your heart, b'chol nafshecha, with all of your soul, u'b'chol meodecha, and with all of your might. Ve'ayu ha'devarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavcha hayom. The words that I'm commanding you today, in other words, what I just told you, that you have to love Hashem with all of your heart, with all of your soul, with all of your might, those words should be today al levavecha. It should be on your heart, in both of your hearts. What both of your hearts? With both of your yetzarim, yetzer tov, yetzer hara. You should have a pure love of Hashem. Right? Al levavecha, on your hearts. Then vishinantam levanecha, and then you shall teach your children. Right? You shall, speak the words of Torah to them, etc. Very powerful Al-Shich HaKadosh. The Al-Shich gentleman was one of the great rabbis of Tzfat that merited the title HaKadosh, the Holy One. There are a few rabbis like that, I think 4. The Or Chaim HaKadosh, the Al-Shich HaKadosh. There are a few rabbis that got the name of HaKadosh. Same time, what? The Ari HaKadosh, exactly. They're all the same time, exactly. So the Al-Shich HaKadosh says the following. I'll read you his words, okay? He says over here, you see a tremendous yesod, tremendous foundation in chinuch and education of children. He says, Vehu, ki im yihiyu hadvarim hayotzim mipi hamelamed Torah o mochiach b'mishor mikerev libo. If the words that come out of the Rebbe, the teacher of Torah, or the one who's instructing students, or a parent who's encouraging his son to learn, if they come out mikerev libo, from the depths of his heart, Says the Al-Shich HaKadosh, Ken mehalev nasau ve'ad lev shomehem yelechu. They will travel from his heart all the way to the heart of the person on the receiving end. Kechitzei gibor shenunim. They will be like arrows of a mighty soldier. V'sham yanichu lishmor ve'lasot bekol ma'amatzei koch. And he will receive those waves of encouragement from his Rebbe. He'll keep them there forever to do whatever he can to follow the words of his Rebbe or his parents. However, if the person who's delivering the message, he doesn't give it to him from the depths of his heart, it's just superficial, it's just coming out of one mouth, it goes to the other. So then, when it goes to the ears of those who hear him, they'll stand outside. And they will not bear any fruit. This is what it means when it says that al levavecha, on your hearts, vishinantam levanecha, teach your boys, your sons. Abotai, let me explain. You have a parent. The parent is sitting on the couch. He's got the remote control in his hand. His legs are kicked up right over here, right? With a bag of potato chips right here. Okay, he's clicking away, enjoying the evening. And then he yells to his son upstairs, right? Hey, Yossi, how come you're not steiging right now in the base medrash, right? How come you're not sitting and learning Torah at shul? Yossi. Okay, so now, the parent, I guarantee you that if the parent is sincere, he's for sure, he means well. Guaranteed, he means the best. He wants his child to learn. He values learning Torah. It means something to him. If he's telling him about it, I'm sure it really is a very important idea for him. But at the same time, it's not a value that he himself places much emphasis on. Because here he is, and he didn't go to the Bet Midrash today at all. He came home, he turned on the TV, he's eating potato chips, and he's watching the game. So he's wondering now, how come Yossi, his son, is not in the Bet Midrash learning? Because it didn't come from the depths of his heart. That's what the Al-Shich is teaching us from the Parashat, from the Shema. He says, if it's al levavecha, if it's on your heart, right? It's on your heart. It's a very part of your fiber. It's your soul. It's everything to you. It's al levavecha. Then, when you teach it to your kids, it'll mean something. Your son will know, this is what my father is telling me. He learns Torah. Torah is his life. He's going, he's listening to shiur. He's coming, he's listening to a shiur. He makes it a part. Every day he learns a few mishnayot. It means something to him. It's a part of who he is. And then he tells me that I have to learn. Okay, so I understand. It's real. It means something. That's why the Chafetz Chaim says in the second paragraph of the Shema, what do we say? Velimadetem otam et benechem. The Chafetz Chaim points out something amazing. It says, Velimadetem otam, you shall teach them et benechem, to your children. The word otam normally is spelled, otam means them. So you shall teach them, meaning the words of Torah, to your children. Normally speaking, otam is spelled aleph, vav, taf, mem. Right? If you look in the Torah, the vav is missing. So it says, instead of aleph, vav, taf, mem, it says aleph, taf, mem. If you remove the vav and you don't put any vowels, how would you read that word? Atem. So velimadetem otam becomes ulimadetem atem. You have to learn. You want to teach your children? The only way to teach your children is if you yourself learn. Because you have to make it a part of who you are. When it becomes a part of you, that there's nothing more important than following in the ways of Hashem and learning Hashem's Torah. So then your kids pick up on it, and when you talk to them, it comes from the depths of your heart, and it enters the depths of their hearts. It means something. It's al levavecha. It's on your heart. Then You guys hear the message over here? Yes. What? It's very important. Thank you so much. Yes.
Now, so Moshe Rabbeinu even cheat his son, the same as you say.
This is a very big question. It's a very big question. I'm sorry?
He didn't spend time with his kids.
I don't know. I don't have a good answer. It could be what you're saying, that he didn't spend enough time with them. I don't know. But it does say that there's a very interesting discussion about the children or grandchildren about Moshe Rabbeinu, which comes up in the book of Shoftim. And they're not presented in a good light, to be honest.
Well, sometimes
It's yeah.
Really, they don't know Torah, they
Right.
don't know nothing, but the son is becoming rabbi.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
So based on what you said, what the rabbi, who said the rabbi?
Yes. But you see, the idea is like this. Even if the father might not necessarily know Torah, but if it's really a part of his essence, a part of his heart, it's in his heart, it means everything to him, then when he talks to his son about it, it'll enter his heart. That's the point. Now, normally speaking, though, the only way that it'll really work is if the guy really does have something of, it's a part of himself. In other words, if you don't really care about it, so then how's the kid supposed to believe you when you say, go learn? You know what it's going to do? I'll tell you exactly what it's going to do. It's going to make the kid, when he's a father, sit on the couch and tell his son, why don't you go learn? Understand? That's all it's going to accomplish. It's not, nobody's going to end up learning. It's just going to say, why don't you and why don't you? Yeah, it has to be a part of you. What?
What the mom?
Oh, of course. The mom, no question about it.
So the case of Moshe is different than the case of Aaron.
What are you saying? Sorry, what?
In case of Aaron, he has a different wife. In case of Moshe, he has a different wife.
Yes.
So that has to do with the.
Yes. No, it happens to be that Moshe was divorced from his wife. Moshe separated from her because Hashem told him to. It's an interesting thing. Yeah. What?
It's a very family. So
No.
how you could teach them?
Again, I'm not trying. Moshe Rabbeinu's life was very different. He was very different. He is trying to. It says at the end of his life, he reached a point where half of his body was human and the other half was like a malach. It's a different point. It says, right, it's a different level of people. So you're right, it had an effect, unfortunately. But I think the yesod of the Al-Shikh is very powerful. The foundation that he's giving us is that the proper chinuch only comes about when you yourself train yourself first. You have it on your heart, it means something to you, then it'll mean something to your son. That's the way. What's that?
To answer to Ruben.
Yeah.
Isn't that like learning from here? The father must do his hishtadlut,
Right.
but the rest of the gilgulim, no? Which gilgul? Like Yitzchak Avinu. And two sons, one direction, Yaakov in the direction. They are both the children of Yitzchak.
Yes.
Depending which gilgul they had. So
It could be a Gilgul question. It could be everybody's different for whatever the reason may be. You have to do your best, right? But you see, though, that Esav had a lot of respect for Yitzchak. It did have some effect on him. It didn't just go on deaf ears for Yitzchak. Esav had a tremendous amount of respect.
So from beginning, Hashem didn't want Moshe's son to continue his way.
I can't tell you if it's from the beginning or not.
From beginning, Hashem told Moshe,
Yeah.
separate your wife, family, and you have to serve me.
At a certain
the father
point,
is not with the family. How the son going
I
to
hear.
follow him?
Listen, I can't tell you exactly what was the plan. It's a hard thing to understand. I don't understand it exactly, but there's no question it did have an effect. In the book of Shoftim, it's brought down. There was somebody, Gershom, which is Moshe's son. Some say that this was a grandson of Moshe that was involved in idol worship, which is a very heavy crime according to Torah. In some form or another, he was involved in that. So Say to yourself, my goodness, how could that happen? The answer is people are different. People are different. It's just, Moshe Rabbeinu was one person, his son is somebody else. But yeah, it had an effect. Don't get me wrong, it had an effect. Okay, I want to share with you one last point from the Vilna Gaon that I think is really amazing. He points out a pasuk in the Parashat. This is from his book called Divrei Eliyahu. He says the following: "Va'avadetem sham Elohim, ma'aseh yedei adam etz va'even, asher lo yir'un ve'lo yishme'un ve'lo yochlun ve'lo yirichun." It says in the parasha that Hashem tells the Jewish people, we read this on Tisha B'Av, if you guys mess up, I'm going to kick you out of the land of Israel. It's already spoken about from now. From before Moshe even entered Israel, they're already talking about it. If they mess up, if they do something wrong, Hashem is going to kick them out of Israel. And you know what's going to happen when they're living amongst the Goyim? Then it says, they're going to worship idols. You'll worship there. Now pay attention to the criteria here. You're going to worship etz va'even, gods that are made by people, made out of stones and made out of wood. Now, listen to this. Asher lo yir'un, these gods cannot see. Ve'lo yishme'un, these gods cannot hear. Ve'lo yochelun, they cannot eat. Ve'lo yirichun, and they cannot smell. Okay? That's what it says. And then it says, Uvikashtem misham et Hashem, and you shall seek Hashem over there. Hashem Elokecha umatzata, you will find him. Guys, pay attention to every word over here to understand this. You need every single word. You will seek from there Hashem, your God, you will find him. Ki tidreshenu, because you will search for him b'chol levavecha v'chol nafshecha, with all of your heart and with all of your soul. Okay? So again, it's talking about the idea they go to exile. They're going to worship gods that don't see, they don't hear, they don't eat, they don't smell. Right? But you'll search for Hashem over there, and you'll find Hashem because you'll search for him with all your heart and with all your soul. Says the Vilna Gaon, there's a very interesting question here. It says that you're going to worship gods that don't see, don't hear, don't eat, and don't smell. Why doesn't it say gods that don't speak? One thing that's missing here is gods that don't speak. Says the Vilna Gaon, a very interesting answer based on a midrash in Shir HaShirim Rabbah, on the pasuk of Amarti Ele Betamar of Chazav V'Samtzinav. Over there, the midrash says the following. The midrash says a very interesting story about the king Nebuchadnezzar and the prophet Daniel. As you know, Daniel was one of the prophets that was exiled from Jerusalem as a child when Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the temple. He took Daniel, he took other Jewish children, and he wanted to make them nobility. And he put them in the royal academy that they should become nobility. Daniel refused to eat anything that wasn't kosher. He refused to eat all of the meat. And he kept himself pure even as a child. And he grew up and became a real strong prophet. Nebuchadnezzar tried everything he could to get Daniel to convert, to become an idolater, to worship idols. Nebuchadnezzar made a sculpture, made a big sculpture, a big idol. And this idol would speak. It would say things like, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I am Hashem your God. It would say things like that. The idol would talk. And Nebuchadnezzar would bring musicians to play music in front of it and to sing to it and to praise it. And after they were done, the idol would start speaking. And it would say things, I am Hashem your God, I am this, I am that, etc., etc. It would talk. Okay?
What power?
What?
What power?
Very good question, Mr. Ariel. With what power? That's the right question. Beautiful. So let's explain. So he goes over, Nebuchadnezzar goes to Daniel, and he tells Daniel, you don't understand. My idol is the real deal. He says, what do you mean? He says, you'll see. All I'm asking you, he says from Daniel, go to see my idol one day. Just go look at it. When you look at this idol, you see what it does. I guarantee you, you're going to run and hug the kid and kiss this idol by yourself. You won't even need me to ask you to do it. So just go see it and you'll see what I'm telling you. That's what Nebuchadnezzar told Daniel. So Daniel decided to go to see it. And he saw what was happening. And Nebuchadnezzar was watching the reaction of Daniel. He wanted to see how will Daniel respond to what's taking place. So Daniel goes to Nebuchadnezzar. He sees the idol is talking. They sing to the idol. They praise it. So he says to Nebuchadnezzar, is it okay, Your Majesty, if I go and I kiss the idol? So he says, you want to kiss the idol? And he says, yes. He says, what do you want to do? He says, I want to kiss the idol on its mouth. He says, you want to kiss this idol on its mouth? He says, yes. He says, why on the mouth? He says, because the idol is speaking such beautiful things. I want to kiss it on the mouth. Nebuchadnezzar was, of course, he was amazed. Of course, go do it. So Daniel runs up to the idol and he puts his face on the face of the idol. And then he says the following. He says, I know what your secret is. He says to the idol, inside of you, they took the tzitz, which is the forehead plate of the Kohen Gadol, that on the plate of the Kohen Gadol that goes on his forehead, it says God's name on it. It says Kodesh LaHashem, LeYud-Kei Vav-Kei. He says, I know what's inside of you. They took that tzitz of the Kohen Gadol and put it in your mouth. And that's why you are doing what you're doing. He says, I am making you swear, he tells the tzitz. You were created to serve Hashem. If you do this, you are making a chilul Hashem. I'm not allowing you to do it. I am Hashem's agent. I am Hashem's servant. I represent God in this world, and I am making you swear that you're coming out right now. Daniel opened his mouth, put it on top of the mouth of the idol, and took out the tzitz from the mouth of the idol and removed it. He left, the idol went down. The musicians kept on playing. Nothing. The idol's not talking anymore. The idol's not doing anything anymore. Nothing happening. So what happened? There was a strong wind that came and knocked down Nebuchadnezzar's idol and it was destroyed. Says the Vilna Gaon, you want to know why the pasuk over here says that you're going to worship idols on foreign lands that don't see, don't hear, don't eat, and don't smell? But you're asking, well, why doesn't it say they don't speak? Because the idol that you're going to have over there, he's going to speak. You understand? The idol, what?
The same thing was with Lavan. The idol was talking.
Correct. That's right. Correct. That's right. So they don't really speak, but when you put Hashem's koach into it, and unfortunately use it for the wrong reason, it speaks. It says the Vilna Gaon, the reason it doesn't say an idol that doesn't speak is because over here, the pasuk is referring to the story with Daniel, which is going to happen many years later, where the idol does speak. But, says the pasuk, Uvikashta misham et Hashem elokecha umatzata. You're going to look over there and see, how's this guy speaking? Right? You're going to find out that it's got Hashem's name, umatzata, and you'll find it there. You'll find it in the mouth of the idol. Kitidrashenu, because you're going to look good, and you're going to ask yourself, what koach was put into this idol that it should be able to speak? Exactly like Mr. Ariel asked. And when you look for it, you find it. You'll see that it's fake. That was the big test of idolatry. Do you believe in the nonsense or not? It looked real. People aren't idiots. Seeing is believing. You look at it, you see it, you think it's real. But the question is, are you going to fall for the trap of the Yetzer Hara or not? That was the big question everybody had, that everyone had to deal with. Yes, you have a question.
Sometimes we learn it was the idol that he used to speak, but they used to do from Tum'ah.
Yes.
Not always from Tahara. That was from Tahara, that was from
it was unfortunately taking the Torah and abusing it. 100%. Chazakim Buchim, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us on Zoom. Chazakim Buchim, guys.